When you're working with a land surveyor, what are the pros and cons of time and materials pricing? So just to kind of give you a basic understanding, there's really three main ways a land surveyor is going to bill for their professional services. One is lump sum. That's where they give you a fixed price ahead of time to do everything you need. The second is what we call time and materials. And the third is called time and materials not to exceed. Now, I've got some other videos that explain that, but just so you understand, lump sum is like when you buy an airline ticket or you take your car to the mechanic and they give you one price to fix. They do a little diagnosis and they say, all right, you need a new transmission, and then they give you a price to buy and put in a new transmission. That's like lump sum. Time and materials is like when you get in a taxi in New York City and they just start the meter. So they bill, you don't know what the bill is ahead of time. It's whatever the meter says when you're done with the taxi. And then T&M not to exceed, that's most typically used on government contracts. That's where you bill T&M, but you give the client a not to exceed price. Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about what are the pros and cons of time and materials billing. Now, one of the reasons I decided to talk about this is a few months ago, I was in a meeting with a client and there was another surveyor there from a different company. So we were both on what's called an on-call list. And we were talking about a big project, and the other surveyor in the room kept trying to arm twist the client into just giving him T&M, letting him bill T&M. And I told the client in front of the other surveyor, I don't think you should do that. I said, I think you should go lump sum. If you do T&M, you're not going to know what your bill is going to be. You're going to have to pay this other guy whatever bill he sends you, and I don't think that's a good idea. And this was a big firm with substantially higher overhead than us, and he knew he couldn't compete with me on the value we provided for the fee, and so he was just trying to get a blank check from the client. And so I wanted to do this video. That doesn't mean it's always bad to pay for work on time and materials, but I want to explain when does it make sense? What are the pros? What are the cons? Okay, so let's talk for a minute about the pros. So what are the pros or the advantages of having your surveyor work on time and materials? So one is we can start work immediately, usually. That means I don't have to spend a bunch of time worried about getting a really detailed scope of services and putting a bunch of time into figuring out what my fee estimate is going to be. You just agree to pay me for the work I do, and I go start work. The second thing is I'm not going to charge you to do a proposal. So if we're doing lump sum, especially if I haven't worked for you before, I may charge you a small fee to do the proposal and the estimate because that costs money. So if you're doing T&M, we don't have to do that. And then the other advantage, the main advantage, the reason people like T&M is you only pay for the work we do. So you don't pay for any of the work that we don't do. So you're not paying for the value we provide, and you're not really paying for any of our risk and uncertainty. You're just paying us agreed upon dollar rate for every hour we work, essentially. All right, so that all sounds pretty good. Like, man, why isn't everything T&M? Yeah, I would love it if everything was T&M. But it's not, and rarely do we do T&M work, primarily because T&M works out best typically for the surveyor, for the consultant, not for the client. So that's why we don't do a ton of T&M work. That's not what most clients want. So what are the cons or the disadvantages of having a surveyor bill you time and materials? So one con is you don't know how much the bill is going to be until I send it to you. So that makes it hard to plan and budget. It leaves uncertainty. So again, think about the example with the taxi and the meter, right? You don't know how much the taxi bill is going to be till the meter stops. The other thing is a lot of times if we're going to work T&M, I am going to ask you for a retainer because the most frequent type of bill that goes unpaid is a time and materials bill. Why do those bills go unpaid? They go unpaid because the bill ends up being way more than the client thought, and then they don't want to pay your bill. So we almost never do T&M here without a retainer at my company at Redefine Horizons. And then, the task execution can be a little bit stop and go because you're regularly checking in with the client about how much the bill is, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're billing the client a lot more than they expected. So, there's a lot more communication while the work is being done on how much the work costs. If you go lump sum, you just avoid all that. That just all gets done right at the beginning. Okay, so now you got the pros and the cons. When does it make sense then? Given those pros and cons, when does it make sense to have your professional land surveyor bill you on a time and materials basis? So I've got 4 reasons why you might want to do that. One is we can't determine how much work there is ahead of time. If I can't determine how much work there is ahead of time, it's really hard to do a lump sum estimate. We can, but it's going to be expensive. I'm going to put a lot of cushion in there. The second reason is when the tasks that we have to perform are uncertain. So you come to me and you say, I want to build a stadium. I want you to be my land surveyor, land planner. Yeah. Oh, and you tell me, I don't know where the stadium's going to be yet. We're still selecting a site. It's almost impossible for me to estimate that level of effort. In that case, I'm probably going to want to do the work for time and materials. The third reason is it's not practical to phase. So sometimes a better way to price work, a better way than time and materials and just one lump sum up front is to phase it. So you phase the work. It's lump sum by phases. So you go and you do phase 1 for a lump sum, then you price phase 2 lump sum. That eliminates some of the uncertainty, helps keep the price down. But sometimes you can't phase. And then finally, number 4, if you really don't want to pay me for any work that I don't do, then we got to go T&M. Because you have to understand, on a lump sum contract, I take the risk that things are going to take longer than I think, or that I'm going to run into unexpected challenges, and I price that risk. So every lump sum job I do, I put in a little bit more than I think it's going to take, because sometimes things take way longer. And so, every client that gets lump sum is paying a little bit for a little bit of insurance, right? So that I don't go bankrupt when I have a lump sum job go sideways. All right, so what did we talk about today? We talked about the 3 ways you can be billed by a land surveyor primarily, talked about the pros and the cons of time and materials billing, and we talked about 4 reasons when it might make sense for your land surveyor to bill you time and materials. What I would tell you as a general rule, if your surveyor wants to bill you time and materials, you need to be a little bit skeptical. You need to ask some good questions. It can be appropriate to do that, but usually your land surveyor can bill you a lump sum, and that's typically going to be better for you as the client. So in future videos, I'll give you some examples of some projects where time and materials billing makes sense. We'll talk about if you're going to get billed time and materials by someone like a land surveyor, what should be on your bill. If you're going to so our time and materials bills here look a little bit different than our lump sum bills because I think you owe the client a little more information when you're billing time and materials, so we can talk about that. So if you like these videos, hit the subscribe button for me on YouTube, please. Give the video a like or share it on social media. Reach out to my team if you're in California or Nevada and you've got a real estate or infrastructure project, land development project, and you want to work with a surveyor who is honest and does transparent billing. We can do that for you. And you can also reach out to us if you need a project manager just to help you manage the other consultants on your team and keep them honest and to manage things like billing. We can also help you do that. And thank you for watching. Appreciate it.